Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. It's a little bit after 10 a.m. I apologize for the late start. We are gathered here at the Capitol in conference room 430 and also via video conference at the state capitol. We're here to hear a number of bills from the Committee on Corrections, Military, and Veterans. Before we start, I've got a couple of announcements. Because morning hearings must adjourn prior to the noon floor session, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your written testimony will be considered by the committee. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you're disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule a hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images. And finally, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. Without further ado, first up, we have House Bill 1676 relating to data collection. And my first testifier is the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. In support, we have House Bill 1676. We have the judiciary offering comments. We have someone from the Attorney General testifying on House Bill 1676. Good morning.
Chair Ono, members of the committee, Christopher Young, I'm the administrator of the Hawaii. Can't hear?
Try it.
Hold on.
Oh, muted. There.
Say something.
Does this work? Can you hear me now?
There we go. Okay.
Good morning, Chair Ono and members of the committee. My name is Christopher Young. I'm the administrator of the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center, Department of the Attorney General. We provided comments, written comments, which outline the actual implementation of this bill if it does get passed. We wanted the committee to be aware that it will take programming changes on both the data center side, as well as each of the police departments. And that will cost both time and money. So we wanted to make sure that you consider that as you move this bill. I'm available for any questions if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Young. We have testimony from the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Good morning.
Good morning. Michael Galoyu, chair of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Happy Lunar New Year, as well as we look into Black History Month, which is American history. On behalf of the caucus, we thank you for hearing this bill. As we outlined in our testimony, we do have some concerns over this bill because of the confidentiality requirements. And we do also want to point out that we definitely do need this data, but how we collect it and how it's kept is of grave concern to the caucus, as we've heard from our members, as well as other members of the LGBTQIA plus community that have been incarcerated. The link that we provided in our testimony is from the continent. That data is from the continent because we do not have reliable LGBTQIA plus data here in Hawaii. Up until recently, we've always had to rely on continent data when it comes to the LGBTQI plus community across the board when it comes to any issues. But the Department of Health is now leading the way and actually going out and gathering that data and providing reports for certain areas. So we definitely do think that this data needs to be collected, but we are gravely concerned on the confidentiality, as well as making sure that we protect the civil rights of those inmates. So on that, I will be available for questions, and thank you for your time to testify. Mahalo.
We hear you. Thank you. We have testimony from the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support, the Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support, and 4 individuals also testifying in support. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1676? Members, any questions? I've got a question. I'd like to call the Attorney General, Mr. Young, back up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I know I've read your testimony and you bring up a lot of points about some of the administrative backend challenges. How many RMS systems are you currently coordinating? You mentioned you'd have to coordinate also with some of the police departments.
Right. It would be the 4 county police departments and state law enforcement agencies such as the sheriff. They each have their own RMS system. So they're the input agency. So they would have to update their systems to accept this new data. And then we do a connection to move it to the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center, which is the official criminal history.
And it would take some time to make those changes to those 5 separate systems.
It would. It'd take both time and cost. For the data center, we do have in-house programmers. I do not believe the same is for law enforcement agencies. Most of them contract with an RMS provider.
Okay. And there was a piece of testimony concerned about confidentiality and perhaps people being outed when they weren't prepared to. How's that data kept? Is that data kept confidential, or is it at least anonymous, or would folks be able to use that perhaps in unsatisfactory ways?
So currently there's 2 sets of criminal history data that's available. One is conviction related materials. So if you're convicted of a crime, that becomes public. You can get it on our public website and download that information. The other is arrest but no conviction data. That is deemed confidential and it's only released to law enforcement. So if the purpose of this bill is to collect data, the release would be limited to what Chapter 846 allows, and that's basically for law enforcement purposes. So the earlier testifier talked about we need this data. And so it really needs to be clarified on who's going to use this data that law enforcement is going to collect.
Understood. Thank you. Rep. Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. For Mr. Young. I wanted to ask about how this would affect those who are gender non-conforming.
I'm not sure what your question is asking. Currently, we collect three sets of data for gender. It's male, female, and we indicate by an X that the person has related some other gender. It's not broken down into specific categories. And so this is self-reported. It's not mandatory. And so it really depends on what the person at time of arrest relates to the booking officer. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? I thought I might have seen another hand. Rep. Kobayashi.
Hello. For Attorney General, would we have to write something into the law to say something about confidentiality, or can you handle that on your end?
That's already written into Chapter 846, confidentiality of records that we collect. The issue is going to be, what is the intent of collecting this data? The FBI, who we report data to, does not collect these different categories. They collect male, female, and other. So I am not sure who the legislature intends to give access to this data. And that would be controlled by Chapter 846.
So you're saying we have to write something in to the law to explain who gets this data, which may or may not be confidential, depending on what the law says. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
846 does have provisions already for research and things like that. But if there is a specific use that you're intending to use this for, then yes, there would be need to be updates in Chapter 846.
Thank you. Members, further questions? House Bill 1676. Moving on to 1650, House Bill 1650, relating to offender reentry. First up, we have PSD. Good morning, House Bill 1650.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Max Otani, Department of Public Safety. We'll stand on our written testimony in support of this measure and will be available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Office of the Public Defender. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm James Cobbett with the Public Defender's Office. We too also stand on our testimony in support of this bill, and we will be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Department of Budget and Finance offers testimony, offering comments. The Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission also has testimony on House Bill 1650. Is anyone here from the Correctional System Oversight Commission? We also have testimony from the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members. Scott Morishige, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness and Chair of the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. I submitted written testimony supporting the intent and offering comments. And I just wanted to note very quickly, many housing programs and potential employers actually require an individual to have identification and other vital documents as a condition of housing placement or employment. So ideally, to improve and maximize positive housing placements and connections with employment, the bill should likely include both pre-release efforts to really ensure that individuals have ID and other documentation upon release. So accordingly, if the bill moves forward, the committee may want to consider amendments just to clarify that Project Reset also specifically includes pre-release services in coordination with the Department of Public Safety Reentry Coordination Office. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Morishige. We have testimony from the Department of Prosecuting Attorney offering testimony in support, the Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition, and the Chamber of Commerce offering testimony in support. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1650? Members, any questions? House Bill 1650, Vice Chair. To Director Otani.
Hi, Director. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
In the testimony submitted by Scott Morishige with the governor's office, and then just in the statement, he reiterated the need for the department to offer government-issued identification. Just wanted to follow up with you as to how you might help coordinate that, and kind of where you folks are in that program.
Okay. We, as far as issuing inmate IDs, we have just recently received the machine, and the coordination between the city and the state, because what we're doing is we're actually creating the IDs for the city at this point. So we have just recently received the machine, and there is some connectivity issue that we are addressing in addition to training as to how to produce the ID. And once it's done, then we should be getting IDs printed in about 2 months. We should be being ready to start printing IDs for inmates.
Thank you, Director. That's good to hear.
I have a question.
Rep. Moikawa.
Thank you, Chair. For Mr. Otani, are you having issues with getting the proper paperwork before you can issue the ID, or do you guys have that all on file?
I can have Deputy Director Tommy Johnson address that. He's been really involved in the ID process. Thank you.
The holdup is the connectivity of the machine, which recently just came in. And so the process we worked out with the city and county as far as how the application process will go, how the drop off and pickup will go, all those details are worked out. We've already drafted the policy. Once the connectivity issue is up, then we should be ready to go because the staff just recently, the 2 staff members just recently completed the required training they needed to work on the machine and complete the background check in order to have access to the machine, which is really just a remote terminal that we will then process data to the City and County Department of Customer Service. They then will review the information, provide, if there's any hiccups, they'll let us know. If not, they'll do their thing, issue the ID card, and we'll pick up the hard copy ID card, and it becomes part of the inmate's property. So when they're released to go to work furlough, they then will be issued the ID card.
Just to.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to add, yes, if the inmate is from out of state, it may be difficult to get the proper paperwork to, coordinate the printing of the ID.
Okay, but as far as locally for residents here, birth certificates, social security cards, are they able to access those to get a proper ID when they leave?
Okay, the Social Security card, we're working with the Social Security Administration now on an MOA so that they will be able to issue, or we'll be able to work with them so they can issue only replacement Social Security cards to inmates who previously had one. Those that will be applying for initial card, those that were born overseas or legal citizens of the United States or legal aliens of the United States, there's a different process they'll have to follow. And we'll have that packet of information ready to provide to them. The local offices are not reopened yet because of COVID. That is the only holdup we're getting an MOU in place at this point with the Social Security Administration.
Okay, thank you.
Rep. Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who this question is addressed to, but there's a $375,000 amount appropriation in this bill. Is that enough? And how was that arrived? It seems quite low.
I'm not sure how the amount was obtained. This is Max Atani, Department of Public Safety. But the purpose of the funding was to create case management services for the transition out into the community. And it's probably based on salaries that case managers are paid.
So, Director, do you think that that's enough to cover all people released?
Again, this would be like a startup project and see how successful it is at this point. I would like to ask for more money, but I'm not sure, the feasibility of it at this time.
And Rep. Kobayashi, I think in the testimony, it's mentioned that Senator Moriwaki and her Ending Homelessness group came up with this solution. For further background on Project Reset.
Yeah, but I wonder how they came up with the dollar amount, or who came up with.
Yep, that's the question maybe perhaps Senator Moriwaki and the EHG may be able to address. Further questions? If not, we're moving on. House Bill 1739. First up, we've got PSD. Good morning again.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Max Atani, Department of Public Safety. Department agrees with this measure and supports the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We have testimony from the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. In supports, Common Cause Hawaii supports, Community Alliance on Prisons supports, Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition supports, ACLU in support, and an individual testifying in support. That's all the testimony I have for House Bill 1739 for this housekeeping measure. Members, any questions? Rep. Kobayashi? Oh, okay. That's enough. Further questions, 1739. Okay, thank you, members. House Bill 2169. First up, we have PSD.
Good morning.
2169. Good morning.
Good morning. We would just stand our written testimony supporting the intent of this measure. Would be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We have the Oversight Commission again, offering testimony in support. Common Cause Hawaii, offering comments. Oh, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma with Common Cause Hawaii. We have comments and a question actually regarding how HB 2169, which is to provide assistance to get state IDs, how that bill will integrate with automatic voter registration that was passed last session. Automatic voter registration applies to state IDs as well, and we're just not sure how assisting people, which we fully support in getting state IDs, will interface with automatic voter registration. And we thank everyone at the state legislature and you legislators for passing automatic voter registration. We just want to highlight the two should integrate, and we don't exactly know how that would work, but that's just my comment. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful, great point, thank you. We have testimony from the Community Alliance on Prisons. I'm sorry, 2169. We have testimony from the Women's Prison Project in support. The women's, okay.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Ono and Vice Chair Ganadin. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I'm Linda Rich, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Women's Prison Project in strong support of House Bill 2169. Having an ID card is just such a basic necessity for all of us, and being sure that people transitioning out of incarceration have an ID card really eliminates many of their barriers for successfully integrating back into the community, such as seeking housing, social services, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. So we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have testimony from the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support. That's all the testifiers I have on my list for House Bill 2169. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay. We're going to move on. House Bill 2309. First up, we've got PSD 2309.
Hi, good morning, Chair Max Otani, Department of Public Safety. We offer comments in our written testimony, basically outlining the jurisdictional issues with offenders being released from facilities. While we welcome any funding that the legislature would provide for offender reentry, we just wanted to make it clear that it would not be PSD, but diversion programs, the judiciary, intake service center, which is part of PSD, but prior to coming into incarceration, as well as the paroling authority would benefit from these resources. Be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, Director. We have testimony from BNF offering comments on 2309. The Maui Multicultural Advisory Council in support. The Community Alliance on Prisons in support.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, and members of the committee. Kat Brady testifying for Community Alliance on Prisons. We're really happy to see this bill because we understand the government cannot do everything. But there are many, many places in the community, organizations that really want to help. And we know that reentry, the community is a vital, vital piece of reentry because that's where people will be coming home. So we want very much to open it up, not always depending on the government, but to actually have the government let contracts for community organizations that will help people who are either being diverted or are reentering the community as returning citizens. So we really support this bill and thank you so much for hearing it.
Thank
I'm
you very
available
much.
for questions.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Brady. We have testimony from Ka'ipu Ha'a in support. The Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support. The Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support. And we have testimony from 2 individuals in support. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 2309? Okay, Ms. Rich, House Bill 2309.
Yes, you should have my written testimony. And again, I'm
Okay.
testifying on behalf of the Women's Prison Project. We're excited about this bill. We know that, that the rates of incarceration and recidivism in our state are high. And we believe that this is a positive step forward in reducing both of those things. We also know that the pathways to crime and to recidivism are so frequently related to addiction, trauma, mental health, poverty, lack of education, lack of affordable housing, lack of job skills. And it's the nonprofit sector in the community that has the experience and the expertise to address these issues. We also know that the nonprofit sector is often the first one on the chopping block when things get tight financially in the state. And that we have many nonprofits who serve this population who have had cuts to their funding recently. So we strongly support this bill. Thank you for hearing it, and we urge you to pass it. And I'll be around for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. I apologize. I see you on our list. I just must have skipped you over in my error. So thank you for your patience and calling yourself out. That was my fault. Further testimony. Anyone else here wishing to testify on 2309? Members, any questions? Moving on, House Bill 1737. We have 1 testifier, PSD. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Max Otani again, Department of Public Safety. The department opposes this measure. I guess pursuant to Act 8, Session 2007, Department of Public Safety has been returning inmates to the state of Hawaii for parole releases prior to the expiration of their minimum term expiring. We've submit a report to the legislature annually on this matter. We also feel that there may be some contractual issues regarding this bill as far as not compensating the vendor for inmates' housing and welfare. So we are in opposition to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testimony I have for House Bill 1737. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? Members, questions? Vice Chair.
Director Otani. How much does the state of Hawaii currently spend out of the general fund on contracts with private prisons?
I believe the contract is around $40 million.
And is that after a reduction from the 2021 legislative session?
Not sure. Currently the contract is for about $40 million a year. I'm not sure what the question is.
I believe in the at the last legislative session, we reduced the amount that we are going to be paying to CCA, our current contractor, by $15 million. So I'm just checking to see if that's $40 million.
I believe what happened was there was a surplus of funds in that account, which was taken by taken by the legislature. It wasn't actually reduced, but because we did not fill all of the bids as planned, there was money in there. There was a balance in there that was taken by the legislature to balance the budget.
So
it wasn't a reduction of the appropriation that we received.
So the amount essentially stayed the same that we paid from the last few years to the present.
Yes, it's budgeted as the same.
Okay. I hope you share our concern that the private prison could be benefiting from enhanced sentencing and from the possibility that incidences that happen in those facilities could lead to their continuing incarceration in the private facility, leading to them increasing their drawdown from our state taxpayer. Would this bill assist the department in drawing down the amount that we're paying to CCA?
We're bringing back eligible inmates, as required to Hawaii for parole consideration. So I'm not sure if this bill would serve that purpose, because it's already being done based on Act 8 of 2007.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Further questions? 1737. Moving on, members, 1738. First up, we have, again, Director Otani.
Hi, good morning again. Max Otani, Department of Public Safety. Department would offer comments regarding this measure. I guess House Bill 1738 is similar to our policies that are established. So we would ask, should any, and our policies are established through NIC and ACA policies. So if any changes to that, it would be difficult for the department to make adjustments to our practices because it would be codified in law at that time. We would have to come back to the legislature to make amendments to our practices based on current trends. Be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We have the Community Alliance on Prisons offering comments.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am really concerned because Kat Brady testifying for Community Alliance on Prisons with comments on this bill. We have been receiving numerous communications from Saguaro, and we are really, really concerned because we've been receiving calls and then from people inside and from their families outside. There's a national movement called Unlock the Box, and it's really gaining momentum around the continental United States. And we believe that solitary really doesn't serve much peniological purpose. And what Hawaii has done is sort of created these euphemisms like admin seg and disciplinary seg. And yet I know people who've been in solitary for admin seg. After 30 days, they're told, okay, now it's disciplinary seg. And I know people who have been in that cycle for years. That is crazy. So not only are there those problems, but long-term confinement in solitary has really devastating effects, not only while the person is inside, but after release. And I know many people who have committed suicide or attempted suicide upon release because they've become so antisocial. They don't know how to actually have a conversation with anybody. So that's a problem. And I received a call from somebody who said, wow, there's a guy in Saguaro who's been in solitary for 28 years. And the other people inside call him a man baby because he doesn't really he can't communicate and he doesn't really understand what's going on. So what we're doing to people, if this person ever gets released, what is going to happen? So we have to be really mindful that most of our people are not in for life. They're going to be coming home someday. And how do we want them to come home and be your neighbor? So we really, really support reforming solitary confinement and stopping this cycle from admin to disciplinary seg, because that's basically solitary, but it's under a new rubric. So we really have problems with solitary confinement. And I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe there might be Eighth Amendment violations happening in Saguaro. Thank you for this chance to testify.
Thank you. That's all the testimony I have for House Bill 1738. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 1738? Members, questions? Vice Chair.
Director Otani. This bill has definitions right at the top. Can you explain to us how administrative confinement works as opposed to disciplinary confinement, and whether administrative confinement would lead to solitary confinement, or am I interchanging words here? Just hoping that you can explain to our committee how this all works.
Well, we first of all, we don't have terminology that we believe is solitary confinement. But I have Deputy Director Tommy Johnson here, who's a little bit more versed in this than I am. So I'll let him answer the question.
Thank you.
Okay, the difference with administrative segregation and other types of segregation is administrative segregation is when a person who is in protective custody to get them away from other inmates so they're not harmed. Disciplinary segregation is for someone who commits a serious infraction which could lead up to a felony while incarcerated. So they're in disciplinary segregation for a certain period of time in order to address the issue. And then they slowly, based on their behavior, work their way back down to lower custody levels. A previous testifier also indicated that someone had been at Saguaro has been there for 20 years in solitary confinement. That is not correct. We haven't been at Saguaro for 20 years, and no one has been in solitary confinement ever, because we don't have that solitary confinement. And no one has been in disciplinary segregation for more time than is absolutely necessary to address the misconduct or the infraction.
So this bill would add in definitions that currently aren't used by the department. So instead of administrative segregation, we call it now administrative confinement. That would be the big difference?
No, I think
utilizing those definitions for placement.
I think some of the terms in the bill are not used nationwide at all by correctional jurisdictions. So I would ask the legislature to please review our testimony carefully. And then the Department of Public Safety is willing to work with the legislature to amend the language of the bill to get the terminologies correct based on the National Institute of Corrections and the American Correctional Association's terminologies on what generally the different jurisdictions around the country have with respect to levels of confinement.
Thank you, Director. And Vice.
Rep. Kobayashi.
Good morning, Director. Your testimony says that this bill has many similarities with PSD's established policies and procedures, which are periodically reviewed and updated. Are there any major differences between this bill and PSD's established policies?
We didn't find any real significant differences ordinances. I guess my personal concern is that we codify this into law. Any changes that occur as far as best practices, we would have to wait to come back to the legislature to, you know,
Okay,
to update
so
our practices.
it-
Currently, our policy is on our website, you know, and available for, you know, for anyone to view.
okay, so right now, this bill and PSD's established policies coincide.
Yes.
Okay, so what about the term periodically reviewed and updated? How often do you review, and who and how is this review and update done?
It's periodically reviewed and updated, and it's based on best practices that's, you know, going throughout the country. So.
But entirely within PSD, the review is entirely within PSD?
Yes, it is.
I see.
It's our operating policies that we review and we update based on information that's coming into the department as far as trends and changes throughout the nation.
Do all of PSD's policies align with NIC, National Institutes of Correction, and ACA, American Correctional Association?
Well, we are not accredited by ACA at this time, so it's difficult to say that we're aligned with them. You know, our policies are reviewed. It is shared with the Attorney General's office for their legal review if it is a legal issue involved. Many times policies are updated based on legal challenges that we face. So.
So again, are there any differences between PSD's policies and those of these two national organizations?
Not that much. This is Deputy Director Tommy Johnson for correction, sorry. We follow the guidelines provided by the ACA and the NIC. As the director indicated, we're not certified by the ACA, but our policies follow the best practices of that agency as well as the NIC.
But do you have any policies that differ from these two organizations?
Not substantially, because their policies are based on nationwide best practices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, further questions? I have a question for Ms. Brady. Good morning again.
Good morning. Whoops. There I am.
Do the guidelines provided by the National Institute of Corrections, what do they say around confinement? And how is that reflected perhaps in this bill? If you're at all prepared to answer that question.
I have not memorized there. I'm sorry. I could get that to the committee. I have a good memory, but not that good.
I understand. Thank you. Further questions, members? Okay. Then we are moving on to the final bill on our agenda, House Bill 2171. First up, we have testimony from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in support. We have testimony from PSD, Director Otani, once again.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Max Otani, Department of Public Safety. The department is in strong support of House Bill 2171. Law enforcement and corrections are two separate entities with distinctly different core functions. On the law enforcement side, this bill would enhance services and it would not be providing more officers, but it would be making the system more efficient and providing better services to the public. On the correction side, there's the issue of rehabilitation, and this bill would add much more focus on the rehabilitation effort within the department and enhance the reentry efforts for offenders exiting our facilities. We have an issue with the bill, and it's on page 23, line 14 and 18, which we would like to make a verbal amendment. We can provide you the actual language of the amendment, but it was brought to our attention yesterday by one of the county police chiefs. And we asked if this amendment could be made to clarify the situation regarding training that is mentioned in the bill. I'm not sure if you want me to read the amendment now, or if it's okay to just, I guess, coordinate with your office on what the amendment would be.
You may just coordinate with our office. Yep.
Okay, great. So we would ask for your support in passing this measure, and we'll be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Got it. And that amendment, members, I think deals with the training. Okay. We have further testimony from the Attorney General.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, members of the committee, Craig Iha, Deputy Attorney General. The Department of the Attorney General supports this bill. As Director Otani testified, it would reestablish Department of Public Safety as a standalone Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, which would be able to focus on its programs without having to split its attention with law enforcement activities. And similarly, the bill would enhance state law enforcement by establishing a new Department of Law Enforcement with a single chain of command to focus on law enforcement obligations. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have testimony from OIP, the Office of Information Practices, offering comments. BNF, comments. The Department of Defense, testimony and support. The Hawaii Office of Homeland Security, support. The SHOPO, State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers. SHOPO with testimony and opposition. UPW, offering testimony, offering comments. HGEA, testifying with comments. The Department of Prosecuting Attorney. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Department. We'll stand on a written testimony supporting the intent of the bill, just suggested some amendments to clarify that there would still be that distinction between state law enforcement officers and county law enforcement officers. But we're available for questions, if any. Thank you.
You got it. Understood. Thank you. We have testimony from a number of individuals, including some sheriffs. My list says they're all in support. Are any of those individuals who wish to testify on House Bill 2171, are any of you folks here? If you are, why don't you turn your cameras on? And is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 2171? Members, questions? House Bill 2171. Sure. Vice Chair.
Director Otani.
Yes.
As the Office of the Prosecutor of Honolulu just noted, will this mean that the new Department of Corrections will have oversight over county and state employees?
The Department of Law Enforcement would not have oversight with the oversight of the county police, and we just want to make that clear. And I believe that amendment regarding training and in the preamble would make that issue very clear.
Okay.
The whole purpose is that we will work parallel with the department in various counties to ensure law enforcement and public safety.
In the written testimony of the UPW, they noted continuing issues regarding staffing. Would this reorganization assist with that?
It would not address that issue. because the correct UPW, represents the corrections officers, and staffing issue is a multitude of problems. People, lack of staff. There's various reasons why we cannot fully staff the ship. We can get into that conversation a little bit later. But UPW, as I said, does not represent the law enforcement.
Thank you, Director. Members, further questions? Rep. Kobayashi, do you have a question? No. Okay. Okay, that's enough. All right, if no further questions, members, we will recess for decision making. Recess. Okay. Good morning again, everybody. We're back with the purpose of decision making on our 10 a.m. agenda. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. First up, we've got House Bill 1676 relating to data collection. We are going to try to add a section here to be sure that any information collected is confidential, strictly for the purposes of research. We're going to defect the date to July 1, 3000. And in the committee report, we'll note that should there be a cost to implement this, that hopefully in future committees, the testifiers can note the appropriate cost to make these changes. Members, questions? 1676. With amendments, Vice Chair.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1676 with an HD1, noting the absence of,
go down the list.
Sorry. Yeah. Representative Bronco.
Aye.
Little rusty. Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative McDermott. Excuse.
Chair and Vice Chair.
Oh, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. To back that up a little bit.
The recommendation is adopted.
The recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. We're moving on. 1650. The relating to offender re-entry. I know Mr. Morishige and the Homeless Department, Homeless Coordinator mentioned the need for many other interventions before anyone leaves the prison system. I think that other bills on our agenda today and many of the bills we'll be hearing Friday will delve into that topic. So for that reason, I'm going to push this bill out. We'll defect the date, July 1st, 3000. We're going to blank out the appropriation and make technical amendments. House Bill 1650, questions, comments? Okay, 1650 with amendments. Vice Chair.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1650 with an HD1. Are there any reservations? Are there any no votes?
Noting the excused absences of.
Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bronco.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. House Bill 1739. This is a cleanup bill. It's a housekeeping bill from a little oversight last year. We're gonna push this out as is. So that's with a clean date, members. 1739, Chair's recommendation is to pass out as is. Vice Chair. Oh, sorry, members, questions, comments? Okay, Vice Chair.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1739 as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any no votes?
And note the excused absence.
And note the excused absence of Representative McDermott. Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Perfect. Thank you, members. Members, House Bill 2169. This was the IDs. We're going to note in the committee reports that we want further committees to look into automatic voter registration and how this might affect it. But the intent is not to impede on any automatic voter registration rollout in the future. We'll defect the dates, July 1st, 3,000. Questions, comments? Vice Chair with the minutes.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 2169 with an amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Are there any no votes?
Excuse absence.
Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up, we have House Bill 2309. The chair's recommendation is to take the proposed amendments by the Public Safety Department. We're going to include, beyond PSD, the expending agencies of the judiciary and the Hawaii Patrolling Authority. And we're also going to include that this money can be used for rehabilitation services. I think all those folks, PSD, judiciary, and HPA, could benefit from some of these additional funds should this be passed out. We'll defect the date, July 1st, 3,000. Questions, comments? Yes. Rep. Kobayashi.
Maybe the language should be flexible for rehabilitation and whatever reentry services.
Thank you. Yes. Let me read it out loud. I like that. This is page 2, line 17 and 18. Those funds will be used for the development and maintenance of diversion and reentry services and rehabilitation and programs by nonprofit organizations within the state. How does that sound? Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, further questions, comments? 2309. Okay, Vice Chair with amendments.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 2309 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Are there any no votes? Noting the absence of, excusing of Representative McDermott, Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. House Bill 1737, Chair's recommendation is to defer this measure. House Bill 1738, members and folks in the public, we are going to push decision-making on House Bill 1738 until the end of our Friday agenda. This committee will be meeting Friday. That's February 4th at 10 a.m. We'll do decision-making on 1738 at the end of that agenda. And House Bill 2171 will be the same. We will take this up at the end of our February 4th, 10 a.m. agenda. Thank you, members. We are adjourned.